everyone. Thank you for joining in this session on our YouTube channel. This was supposed to be live, but life happens, so here we are. Anyway, if you have questions, you can throw in your questions or comments below, and we will try our best to get back to you. So for those who don't know me, I am Chay Sanchez Tanlapco. I am the PAO Young Ophthalmologist Representative to APAO. You've been seeing a lot of me because I'm part of the core group who organizes things for YOs here, and our core group is actually happy to do this. So this session's objective is to give us all a glimpse on how a typical Filipino ophthalmologist goes through life to get to where they are. So today we will be talking to 3 heavyweights in Philippine ophthalmology, and we're going to ask them about their journey towards success. Don't worry, this session won't be toxic. We will really just want to have life lessons after this session. Our first guest is somebody super sikat. He's super sikat. I introduced him in last year's Alcon Symposium. He is the founding president of the PSCRS, and he is here because he is young at heart. As a resident, when I was a resident and until now that I am already a consultant, I have always been in awe of his generosity in sharing his knowledge about cataract. So today he will be sharing beyond cataract. So friends, Dr. Cabrera. So our second guest is another celebrity ophthalmologist. We always see him as he keeps our yearly PAO fellowship night alive. He's one of the strongest people I know because he survived an open heart surgery when he was still a young ophthalmologist. Diba? Because I donated blood.
That's true. That's true. So, thank you.
So other than being
still a young ophthalmologist,
still, yeah.
Other than being an excellent ophthalmologist, he practices in Metro Manila and in Bicol. His wit and humor is really one for the books. That's why he's here. So we're having Dr. John Solamo in the house. Not the least guest is a force of nature in Cebu. He has been in ophthalmology practice for 10 years. Half of which is in Manila and then half in Cebu. Our common friends say he's super nice and animated and he shines in just whatever he does. But his recent feat was his battle against COVID, and we're super happy he's here with us. He's none other than Dr. Emil. So, yay! Why did you choose ophthalmology in the first place? Dr. Cabrera, would you like to start?
Beauty before age.
Yes, of course.
Actually, I went into medicine thinking I'll become a cardiologist. So it's really off. I wanted internal med. I wanted to save lives, things like that. No? But as I got into clinics, I realized that, well, at least in my day, cardiology was purely medical. There was no interventional. You end up passing on your patients, as the case gets more complicated or it becomes surgical. And I felt that was a letdown. I wanted a field where, from the start, medically, I could treat them until it became more complicated or, they got older and it became a surgical case. And I would still be their physician. I didn't want to pass it on. My feeling kasi is, if you're just a medical practitioner and you pass it on to a surgical practitioner and something goes wrong, diba? There is some kind of responsibility. Well, I chose that doctor, or and in the end, parang you're beaten, diba? Your therapy is not complete. It's not holistic. So here, I felt like ophthalmology was a nice way of handling your patients from beginning to end. So I like that. I like its holistic approach. I also like that it's very, maraming finesse, kumbaga. I mean, it's a. In fact, I used to jokingly tell doctors from other specialties that ophthalmologists are not surgeons. I said we are artists. Yeah. We are not surgeons. So the slightest pull on something or increases your astigmatism and everything. So I said at the end of everything, it's practically art. It's so well, finely done. And I said that encouraged me. I think I want to do something that well. So I ended up choosing that. I let go of I was accepted in internal medicine, but I let it go and I went into ophthalmology.
Wow. Bilib ako sa'yo, Kuya Benji. Grabe, natanggap ka sa IM. Ibig sabihin, matalino ka. Sobra ako nga, sinusuka ako ng iba. Hindi, joke lang. Sinusuka nga ako ng ibang department. Hindi. Ako talaga ito, seryoso. I was amazed with the thought of you operating inside the eye. You know, microsurgeries. Sobrang parang kakaiba. You know, you can, if you do, example, okay? If you do an AP, in fact, there are interns who can do an AP after several assists in general surgery. Ikaw na nag-a-assist na ng phaco for almost a year or more than a year, once pinagawa ka ng first phaco mo, definitely hindi sobrang excellent ng result, di ba? So sabi ko yung degree of difficulty sobrang challenging. And nakakatuwa kasi napakaliit nung area na ginagalawan mo, 'di ba? Tulad nga ng sinabi ni Dr. Benji na the slightest mistake talaga, slightest pull can change everything, no? And isa pa, kung ba't ako nag-off, akala ko walang math, meron pala. May computation pala, nagkamali ako, so medyo nagsisisihan ko yun ng konti, no? Hindi, joke lang yun. De, pero yun nga, the thought of the microsurgery part really amazed me. And in fact, the first choice was anesthesiology. Pero sobrang toxic. Ayoko ng toxic eh. Alam mo naman kami, relax lang ang buhay namin. So that's one of the reasons why I also chose ophthalmology.
Wow, it's really nice to be following after both our shares, mga idol, and it's really nice to hear their stories because apparently and perhaps unknowingly, all three of us pala did not initially start to really go for ophthalmology. On the other hand, ako naman, I wanted neurosurgery talaga. So I was so hungry for it back during internship. I went in Dr. Gap Legaspi's surgeries. I went into Dr. Eric Legaspi's surgeries. And if you are from PGH, then you know who he is in the OR. And I certainly had a taste of that. Going out of his OR while ongoing surgery, ayun, heard his voice. Heard him shout, no? So, well, anyway, it was really because of the many things that I carried with me back in fourth year clerkship, internship back here in Cebu, we call it. A good friend who was an anesthesiologist also said na the practicality of things. Like perhaps when you do neurosurgery, you'd have one case in a day maybe, but when you do ophtha, you'd probably get to do 5 cases already and probably do golf in the afternoon or, you know, whatever you choose. And as things went on, of course, my dad's influence was there also. I took a year off from finishing everything before I started. And he was quite wise in bringing me into the loop. He interchanged me with his assistant who did surgery with him. He gave me a substantial assist fee. And the good thing was I was very much happy with it, only to find out that it was just a fraction of the assist fee that he used to give his assistant. So later on, it just went on. I slowly evolved. Needless to say, when the first Orbis came here to the Philippines, it was here in Cebu. And as young as that time, I was already exposed to the surgeries and how you say irrigate and all those things. So perhaps all the exposures and all the walk up the stairs when he went to visit patients with a funny cone on top of the eye each time they're done after surgeries, perhaps really ultimately formed these thoughts and made me love ophthalmology as I do now.
Yung cone, sir, di ba yung famous cone na yun? Ang tawag ko doon, bra ni Madonna.
Yeah, may concert siya na nakaganon siya, di ba?
Tawag ko doon, bra ni
That's
Madonna. So, kasi parang, ako kasi, sir, I'm a daughter of an ophthalmologist. So how my mom started her practice in ophthalmology is different from how your generation started and how my generation is starting now, di ba? So, nung time niyo, sir, how did you start your practice? Paano niyo po inumpisan yung practice niyo after kayong nag-graduate? Iba-iba po kasi yung mga backgrounds niyo, di ba? Like si Dr. Cabrera is here in Manila, and then kayo po mixed ng provincial and Metro Manila practice, no? So how did you come about? Kasi ako po, sobrang to me, out agad yung Manila to me eh. Well, because I'm really from here. My family is from here. But kayo po, how did you start yung practice?
Well, okay. Teka muna, baka naman yung time ko, time na ng nanay mo yun eh. So, pareho yata yung struggles namin. Parang just get that out of the way. No, okay. When I finished, the norm when I graduated was the usual. You go out on your own, you start to practice, you set up your clinic, you find your own ways of connecting to other doctors and buy your own equipment. Ito yung norm, yung typical stand-alone practice. Wala, although my parents were physicians, none of them were ophthalmologists. So wala kang mamanahin eh. So you start from nothing. And I think I was in second year residency. I thought about it already, and I said, this is not practical. I don't think I can afford to just sit in a clinic, fund it completely, and then hope that people walk in. Diba? Kasi wala ka namang network, wala ka namang referral system for Ophtha. So, I already started the idea of coming up with a group practice. And I started talking to my co-residents, si Dr. Ces Espiritu, si Dr. Vic Caparas, also talked to Jaca Arroyo, and eventually Alex Reyes. And we literally, we toyed with the idea of, let's start a group practice. My concept was, and everybody was telling us, all our seniors were saying, that's gonna fail. Mag-aaway lang kayo, it's not gonna work. Everybody we know who starts out as a group ends up fighting. Yeah, they will disband. It's about money. It's about, and you ruin your friendships and all that. So, we started on the footing that we'll make this legal. Let's make it a registered partnership. Let's have a lawyer come in so that kung it gets to the point that something like that becomes a problem, then we know how to split up shares. We know how to input equipment to begin with, so it's equal. So it became a really planned professional partnership. And so when we graduated, I was already part of the partnership because nauna si Alex and si Ces, so they were already in practice. We were already helping them out with their private patients and everything. So we also thought about, sinabi namin na dapat geographically located tayo. Meron nasa North, Quezon City, merong nasa Makati, merong nasa Pasig, whatever, and Manila. So we planned it out that way. So the five of us had clinics which were, strategically placed within Metro Manila, and we started with a full partnership. You earn exactly the same as everybody else. You do as much work. And it gave us the opportunity to allow our partners to go on fellowship, while the remaining ones would man the practice. So we rotated. Hindi sabay-sabay nag-fellowship. Somebody would go ahead, somebody would come back, tapos yung susunod naman yung alis. So this is how we conceptualized the beginning of practice. So in a way, it I think has become a model for for a lot of other practices. Di ba, Jan?
Correct. That's right. Yeah.
It became a norm na you either go into a group practice kung wala kang sariling mamanahin, or you end up in an eye center, which we also set up eventually. So that's how I started. I never really practiced alone when I started.
Sobrang model nga, sir, yung ano niya, yung partnership niya, sir.
Correct.
Hindi, matanda lang kami, nauna lang.
Pero di ba, it's always naman yung if they discourage you, if you think of something bold and new, you will always get di ba, parang negativity, di ba, sa umpisa. Pero it's how you persisted that will define the success of your actions. So, how about you, Dr. Solamo? How did
that's right. Buti na lang Benji brought up that na they became the model. Actually, isa sila sa talagang model na eye center, no, na group practice, no. And minodel namin yung eye center namin sa kanila, no. So I was lucky enough to be invited by Dr. Milante to join his private practice in Legazpi, Bicol, no? So, ito, sasamahan ko na rin ng advice sa mga bata, no? When I was in med school and I was about to choose my specialty, I can still vividly remember my mom telling me, "Anak, kahit na anong specialty kunin mo, wag lang ophthalmology. Wala tayong perang pambili ng gamit." Sutil si Jan Solamo, nag-opta pa rin. Diba? Tigas ng ulo eh. So, during residency, nag-iipon ako. Nag-iipon talaga ako ng pera. I had to save up kasi alam kong wala akong maaasahan sa nanay ko. Okay? At sumipsip din ako sa mga relatives namin na nasa abroad. So, nabilan ako ng slit lamp, nabilan ako ng indirect ophthalmoscope, no?
Wait naman.
Yeah. Sobrang bait ng tita ko na yon, no? Binilan niya ako ng slit lamp tsaka IO, and the rest is history. Ako na yung nag-ipon ng iba, no? Even yung pagpunta ko ng AAO, wala akong nakuhang suporta sa nanay ko noon. Ako nag-ipon noon, no? Sa mga HB ko noon, nung residente ako, inipon ko yan para lang maka-attend at makapagtayo ng clinic. So, etong advice ko sa inyo, mga bata, no? Hindi namin alam, during residency, Dr. Milante pala was observing us already. He was observing the, one being his fraternity brad, no? So, he was observing us during residency. And syempre kami, masipag kami, hindi naman ako ganun katalinuhan, tsaka hindi ako ganun kagwapuhan tulad ni Dr. Benji Cabrera, no? Hindi ko nakuha yun. Pero
Jason.
Maaga lang akong gumising, no? Maaga ako gumising. Maaga ako lang yun nandun. Anyways, in-observe pala niya kami. So, tinry niya kami. He asked us to join him to go on duty. Tapos akala ko it was just a normal duty wherein I'll just cover for him and I'll go back, and that was it. Yung pala tinatanong niya yung mga staff, kumusta tong nag-relieve sa akin na to? Okay ba to? Ay, buti na lang binigyan ko ng pera bawat staff. Binigyan ko tig 20 pesos bawat isa. Okay. So, maganda review sa akin. Joke lang. Buti na lang, kung ano yung ginagawa ko nung nag-residente ako, nung OPD, ganun din ginawa ko sa clinic. So, another advice to the young ophthalmologists, especially the ones who are still in training, you know, kung ano yung ugali mo nung residency mo, yan ang magiging ugali mo. So, kung slacker ka nun, malamang slacker ka rin pagtanda mo. So, kaming tatlo, malamang, I'm sure, 100% sure, masisipag kami nung residente kami. Kaya kami nandito ngayon sa programang to, di ba? Sipag kami umattend ng ng ganito. Cheers lang sa inyo, no? Tama yung kinuha mo, Chay, no? Dalawa seryoso, ako yung lang talaga eh, no? Talagang naramdaman ko na yun eh. Nung nakita ko, Emil Jaca, Benji Cabrera, ako yung joker dun sa tatlo. Alam mo, lang talaga. Sama na natin yun, parang may kalokohan tayo.
Ako naman, when I left for Manila, because Cebu training there weren't that many options for Cebu, and I wasn't really planning to go abroad for any residency training. So I set off for Manila, and the idea was do training and come back home right away. No more plans of staying at all. And somewhere along, my wife, who was then leaving Cebu for her stint back to Manila, more or less went with me as I went to do residency. And just as I went with training, she just couldn't fly back, that being the plan. So long, I had 2 years of admin work at the eye center, where eventually I had to start practice in Manila. Everybody was so surprised why I had to practice in Manila when my dad's practice here in Cebu was just waiting. For the next years, I started practice, and I never realized or thought that there would be some piece of pie in the metro. So my first clinic was all the way up further than Tagaytay, as you go down Alfonso or something. That's where I practiced first, and I circled around the area, Santa Rosa and all that, just before the toll really went up. And enough na tumaas yung toll, it was so lucky na Dr. Santos had called me back to the eye center and started my work there again. And that pretty much restarted a practice that I never thought would be possible in the metro. So I stayed there for a good, somewhere along, my dad finally asked, so what's really your plan? Because to stay there in Manila forever. And at least you have to tell me already. And if your plan is to come back somehow, then tell me when so I'll know. So I finally made the choice sometime in 2016. I decided to really start it here. So I kind of started practice twice. But the good thing here is that my dad has laid down everything already, and we just started on with an eye center being the second in Cebu, which is of course a very tall order, having a very well established eye center also by another group, which is ACES. No? So no comparison at all. But we just had to stick it out, and so far it's been really wonderful. Also, it's been a very nice experience, no. And as Dr. John said earlier, na kung paano ka dati, and then ganun din ikaw in the future or later on. So ang masasabi ko lang, if you really push on for your dreams, no matter how many times you restart, no matter how many hardships and struggles you go through, you can just persevere through it. So
iba-iba
Nice.
Iba-iba po yung kung paano kayo nag-start, no? Kasi like, well, kayo po, Dr. Jaca, parang na-try niyo yung from scratch in Manila, and then na-try niyo din yung parang somebody laid it out for you, right? And then while sila Dr. Cabrera naman from scratch talaga, while si Dr. Solamo naman, somebody invited you also, no? So parang that's...
Yeah, bali half sa akin, no? Scratch pa rin sa Manila, no? Hanggang ngayon, scratch pa rin. Tapos okay yung sabi ko, scratch pa rin ako dito.
John, kaya pala may S dyan sa background mo.
Oh, di ba? Kaya may S yan. Scratch yan. That's scratch.
Ganun. Okay.
So, How did you,
Wala
ano
yan.
po yung mga common difficulties nyo when you were starting? Like during your first 5 to 10 years of practice, ano po yung mga common difficulties nyo? Aside from BIR. Joke lang po. Ano po yung mga
Hanggang
usual
ngayon.
difficulties nyo? Like professional and personal lives. Like ano po yung mga, yung mga difficulties nyo na encounter nyo during your first 5 to 10 years of practice?
Marami akong difficulties eh. Hanggang ngayon, may difficulties pa rin ako. Difficulty of growing hair. Started when I was in residency up to now. Hindi, okay. Number one, when sa akin financial, no? So I didn't have financial support from my parents. I had to do it on my own, no? And dumating ako sa point na yung pangrenta mo, yung pambayad mo ng renta noon sa Manila. Sa Taytay kasi ako una nag-practice, no, with a partner. And we were having problems with our rent, no. Parang dumating ako sa point na anong pambabayad ko sa renta ko, konti pa lang yung pasyente ko. And I can remember what my partner said, Chong, God will provide. No, and if you really work hard and you pray hard, then God will really support you. And kung hindi ka gagawa ng kalokohan sa practice mo, I think God will really help you with your difficulties. And kailangan kong banggitin to, you young people might say that it's corny, no, mentioning about God. Some people might find it corny, but ako talaga sa totoo lang, no, malaki ang naging part niya sa akin. Another difficulty is what happened to me. Yun nga, I discovered that I would be undergoing a bypass, and that was almost at the peak of my career. Hanggang ngayon, di pa naman nagpipik yung career ko.
2009 yun, no?
That was 2011, no? 2011, yeah. I'm almost 10 years na into this year, 2021. I'll be celebrating my 10th year. No, so I'm gonna be having a concert for all of you. Okay, just watch out.
So John,
concert.
John, 25 ka pa lang nung nangyari yon.
42, sir. 42 na ako.
I remember
Saka mall pa yun. Naging artista bigla. Diba?
Oo nga.
Dr. Solamo, ino-operahan.
Naging artista pa.
Ano?
Oo. Buti na lang. Andiyan ka.
Sorry. Walang yaka, Emil. Ano sabi mo, Chay?
Nung ino-operahan ka, pinapanood namin yung tsunami sa Japan.
I know. And during that time, sinabi ng nurse kay Abby noon, sa wife ko, na Doktora, si Dr. Solamo, okay na po, pwede niyo na pupuntahan sa araw. Sabi niya, sandali muna, may pinapanood akong maganda sa TV. Pinabayaan ako. Tapos, when I woke up, she was telling me, oh honey, ganyan, okay ka na, nasa RR ka na. Alam mo ba, nag-tsunami sa Japan ngayon, grabe, nag-tsunami, tsaka naglindol, ganyan, parang sa isip-isip ko, pakialam ko sa, habang nakatubo ko, pakialam ko sa sakit ng dibdib ko, tsaka lalamunan ko, pakialam ko sa Japan.
Sobrang ano doon.
Yeah, that's a very memorable day, no? And my joke during that time was sobrang daming nagdasal for me. Natatawa nga ako eh. Sobrang daming nagdasal daw for me na dapat lindol lang daw yung Japan. Kaso si God daw napatingin daw sa akin, nakalimutan niya, nag-tsunami na. Sabi niya, ay, nag-tsunami. Hindi dapat nag-tsunami. Dapat ano lang yan, lindol lang. Ito kasi gulo na mga nagdadasal kay Solamo, kukulit mo. Masamang damo yan, di mamamatay yan. Huwag kayong mag-alala. Dami pang utang yan eh.
Pero sir, what happened to you, no? It changed you, no?
Yeah. Definitely, it changed me. Yeah, everything changed from my personal view, my religious view, and my health. Tungkol sa health. Dati, every week that I'm in Bicol, I would finish one plate of chicharron bulaklak, no? Tapos yung medrep na maglalabas, hindi siya matitira siya. Sasabihin ko pa, hindi mo nakakainin yan. Akin na lang, ha? Siyempre, mahiya yun. Bibigay pa sa akin yun. So, isa't kalahating platong chicharong bulaklak. Pero may chop suey naman para may gulay. Sama naman namin ng chop suey. No? Para may fibers. May konting fibers. Alam mo na.
So buhat nun dyan, 2 plato na ng chicharon bulaklak.
2 plato, sir. Oo, 2 plato yun. Sarap
Ang
nun,
nagbago,
grabe.
2 na.
2 na. Hindi na kaya. No, pero ito seriously, I haven't tasted chicharon bulaklak ever since. And every time they order chicharon bulaklak, mabaho na, maano na. Masangsang na yung amoy sa akin niya. Masangsang na amoy sa akin niya. That's seryoso to. That's true. Oo. Ano talaga yun?
Difficulty nyo, aside from yung financial part, yung health part, no? Kasi relative.
Yeah.
Ang kagandahan ng changes nun, hindi na siya serious. Dati kasi serious na serious.
Serious.
Really?
Buti na lang, 10 years ago, nag-iba. Hindi na talaga siya serious.
Really? Serious dati?
Hindi
Serious
maniwala
na
ka dyan
dati.
kay Mig. Gago talaga ako. Dati pa ako siraulo na ako dati. Siraulo na ako dati.
I can't imagine you serious.
Puro kalokohan. Oo.
Kasi Sir Emil, feeling ko walang masyadong difficulty. Meron ba, sir?
Hindi naman masyado, pero meron. The thing was, when I finished kasi, I knew that I was one day going to leave Manila. So all the clinics that I started, even the one in Tagaytay, the good thing about that was this guy who had a clinic, wife as an Ophtha, so offered the place, fee sharing lang. So didn't have to set it up, and it was very, very lucky for us na I went there. But I brought in a friend who lived in Las Piñas, so that whenever I left, the patients there would be taken care by this guy when I left. Now, going back to the metro, all the clinics that I set up, I really had a partner, at least one, so that when I really left na, they take care of it. And that's exactly what happened when I left. And the good part about it was having experienced it there. As simple as a slit lamp that my dad had for the longest time, hindi mapapagawa dito, dito sa Cebu, pinaship sa Manila. Nung magawa na, sabi ko, akin na lang to, gagamitin ko na dito. O hindi ko na to babalik. Sana slit lamp ko. Gumagamit na ako dito, kuha ka na lang kay Larry. so I kept it here in Manila, and I practiced with it for a while. So kung sabihin lang yung feel ng starting, I really felt it, because even if my dad was there, hindi naman ako yung tipong tao who asks for things tapos set up mo ako. So I also tried my best to really set up in such a way na it would be win-win for myself and the person that I was working with. And the hardest thing that happened there was that I really felt na talagang how it is to be no one, no? Na talagang when you start, you build your name, and you were saying na parang how difficult was it being nobody in nowhere. When I started, talagang hintay ka, happy ka na kung may isang pasyente isang linggo. And as things went by, syempre dumadami na, and what did I do? Kilala naman ako to be friendly. So kinakaibigan ko yung buong clinic. And when I was in a hospital, kinakaibigan ko yung buong hospital. Kung saan ako mapapadpad, kinakaibigan ko sila. And lo and behold, all those friends that I had in those places became my first patient. Wala silang bayad, yes, but they brought in the patients. They brought in their family, they brought in their friends, and yun, may discount na ng konti. Kung mas malayo na, wala na, full na. But that became the system that I made. I built on that. Sabi ng mga tao, ba't ang dami mong pasyenteng staff kung saan-saang department? Because I became known na pagka nandyan ako, lahat ng mga pasyente, lahat ng mga staff, padala mo sa akin, okay lang, libre na, nakakausap mo pa. And that went on. And even as I got back to Cebu, parang takot ko, kilala, ang dami ng kamag-anak dito, ganon. Pero it just bears fruit, you know. I don't speak of my relationship with God and all that all too out, no? Pero definitely, pag sinabi mo lang na trust in Him, meron pa rin, andyan pa rin, and it really works na just do your share. Just be true to yourself. So, hindi naman siya biglang, wow, ganda. Pero, you just share.
Yeah, thank you for those nice words.
Very nice, very
Pero
nice.
kayo po, ano po yung mga difficulties nyo during your first
Walang difficulty yan. Big time yan, big time.
Actually, iniisip ko kanina bakit binanggit ni Emil na parang napapatingala pa ako para mag-isip. Ngayon na-realize ko na kung bakit. Kasi over 30 years na yon, so hindi ko na maalaala. Pero dahil sa mga kwentuhan natin, marami akong naalala. One, I actually, because Emil mentioned Alfonso Cavite. When we were starting, we were actually working, all of us were working 7 days a week. So I'd be in Manila, let's say, 7 days a week. Manila from Monday to Saturday. After lunch, a partner and I, whomever was scheduled to do surgeries that weekend, let's say, we would drive all the way to Alfonso Cavite to do either surgery in Alfonso or surgery in Cavite City, which we also were manning. This was the time before Dante Odasco graduated, so walang masyadong nagpa-practice, the dad, and parang waiting for Dante to finish. So we were also manning that. So kung minsan mag-opera kami doon, then move on to Alfonso, then operate there. Then because kailangan naman ng konting pahinga, we would spend overnight in Alfonso. Sabagay maganda yung panahon, malamig, sarap ang kape sa barako sa umaga, diba? So, and then the next day, Espiritu would hold clinics in Alfonso Doctors Hospital, which it was called then, and I would drive down to Silang, and I would hold clinics in Velasco Hospital in Silang, and this was our routine. And I'd get home, evening of Sunday, really tired, and the next day is the start of the week again. So there was no day off. It was a 7-day-a-week schedule. I actually became a chain smoker, especially driving that road to Tagaytay and back, because ano lang yun salubungan yun, tas bangin na yung gilid. There were no extra, lanes. There was no shoulder. And driving home, I would literally wake up kasi yung front wheel ko, yung nahahatak na papunta dun sa bangin. So I was off the road. So I would wake up, literally parang, ikamamatay ko na to. So I started smoking nonstop. I would light a cigarette as soon as I'd get into the car. Hindi pa siya ubos, sinisindihan ko na yung susunod just to keep me awake. So that whole trip back and forth, on weekends, I would be smoking nonstop. Eventually, I realized that was gonna kill me also. So
answer na realize nyo?
Yeah, we eventually had to let it go. I mean, luckily, parang yung sinabi ni Emil, you'll get some people to take over. Kasi noong una, wala kaming mahanap. So nahihiya kami. We knew the doctors who owned Alfonso Doctors, sina Dr. Poblete, and they were parang, huwag nyo naman kami iwanan, sinimulan nyo na Tapos, so nag-aabang din kami ng magte-take over. Kasi kami din yung nagmaman. So pag umalis kami, sabay-sabay kami alis, right? And then eventually it was bought by LaSalle. So when LaSalle bought Emilio Aguinaldo, they also ended up realizing, there's a peripheral clinic there, a peripheral hospital na pinupuntahan na ng mga doktor, so why not buy into it? So we were able to let it go. Iniwan na rin namin yung mga Dr. Caparas, I remembered brought his father's really old, parang lamang lang ng konti kay Jose Rizal na hag straight slit lamp na pag siniswing mo yung ilaw tsaka yung oculars ng microscope, magbabanggaan sila. So parang may maneuver ka pa na parang figure of 8 para lang magdaan yung ilaw tsaka yung microscope head, no? So it's very difficult to use, but we managed with it. Nanghinayang nga ako doon kasi that's a museum piece, and we just left it there. So those are the difficulties that the scheduling na parang okay para lang maka-opera and all that. And then I mentioned earlier na group practice, right? So you imagine na madali lang yan. Grupo, di ba? Meron kayong paghahatian. So just a short funny story on that. At the end of one of those early months in this, the first 5 maybe years or so, our secretary, who was also our accountant, would tell us at the end of the ito yung sharing at the end of this, or ito yung kinita and all that. So syempre after a while, bottom line na lang. Ano yung bottom line, di ba? So she goes, sige. Meron kayong tigti 10,000. Sabi namin, hindi masama. Kung 5 tayo, di ba? At least may gross tayong 50,000, may 10,000 tayo each. Then the secretary laughed at us and said, hindi. 10,000 yung babayaran nyo each. Kasi kulang pa yun sa upa natin. So, di ba nag-opera na kami? Di ba meron naman tayo na paraan? Nagbabayad tayo ng upa dito, nagbabayad ng upa doon. So marami nga kaming clinic, marami rin kaming utang. Di ba? So, yung 10,000 na yun, di ko makakalimutan yung figure. Sabi, 10,000. Parang handa na akong pumunta sa Japanese restaurant at mag-sushi. Parang, royal celebration.
Mahal nun.
Oo, di ba?
Ang sushi, grabe.
Japanese.
Ayun na nga.
Yeah.
Kasi nga sabi ko, 10,000 eh. Sabi ko ba, celebration na to, di ba? Pala utang ko pala yon ng 1 buwan. So pala, shit, sabi ko, so kulang pa rin. So there is no easy way to start. I think it's a perseverance, really.
And friends.
Tsaga. Yeah, and friends.
My God. Parang yun po yung denominator sa inyo, no? Parang while you were starting, it's impossible to do it alone. No, parang friends really make it lighter for you.
Yeah.
Chay, I'll add something. I'll add something. Naalala ko yun. That same person back in Tagaytay actually had an interview, and in that interview offered his house. Sabi sa akin, saan ka ba nakatira? Sabi ko, Quezon City. Sabi, Quezon City? Parang ganito, you can stay at my house. Sabi ko, ano kaya to? Bakit kaya ino-offer? Hindi naman ako kilala. Ino-offer niya yung bahay niya. And that first night, sabi niya, ganyan gagawin natin. Tapos, sige pare, alis na ako. Yun pala, overnight, andun siya sa casino, kasi doctor siya doon. He stayed on duty, and then he would come back home 5, 6 a.m. and then go back to his routine naman as with his business. So that first night, sabi niya, ito yung malapit sa, Good Shepherd ba yan? Yung, kasi paloob siya. Paloob. Na sobrang daming puno, na nakakatakot. First time matakotin ako sa ganyung bagay. Pagdating ko doon, saya, pare, feel at home, do anything, here's everything. Dito ka matulog. Sabi ko, paano to? Tatalikod ako, puno. Haharap naman ako, cabinet, paano to? So pagdating niya, 5:00 ng madaling araw, saya, pare, nakatulog ka naman. Sir, okay naman. 5 minutes lang ako naka-idlip. takot ako. Kotse na lang ako matulog next time.
Ay, naku.
Mahirap mag-start, pero, well,
Yeah. Mahirap. Mahirap talaga.
Sir, so yun yung funny anecdote nyo, no, nung starting your practice. Ngayon, so fast forward to years later now, how has everything changed for you? Like, how do you think yung difficulties nyo nun, how has those shaped you to be the ophthalmologist that you are now? Ano sa tingin nyo po yung parang naging change ninyo from dati to now?
Hirap naman nun. Pang Mr. Universe ba yun?
Sorry.
Pinawisan ako.
Paluin nyo na lang ako. Paluin mo na lang ako. Chay, hindi ko kaya sagutin nyo.
Simulan nyo na ng simulan nyo na, I'd like to thank my father,
yes,
my mother, and most of all, my parents.
Okay. Ano ba, Sir John? Seryoso ka dati?
Hindi. Ano seryoso?
Parang hindi ko kayang
Hindi. Naging seryoso lang ako nung PBO. Nung boards, doon lang ako seryoso. Mag-joke ka doon, tinadyakan ako palabas doon.
Examiner pa
Oo.
siya.
Oo, malala ko yan.
Salamat sa
Yung batch niya.
sa move type.
Yeah. I was manning the Fago machine
Yeah.
during that time. Yeah, pag maganda pa mo, pinatatanggal ko yung sapatos. Pag hindi, sabi ko, huwag mo nang tanggalin yung sapatos mo. Magsuot ka na. Hindi, joke lang. Baka maniwala kayo. Hindi ko ginagawa yun.
From dati, anong klaseng tao kayo dati sa anong klaseng tao kayo ngayon? Sa tingin niyo ba nag-change kayo? Or hindi?
Well, honestly, ako, medyo maiksi ang pasensya ko nun sa pasyente. Ayoko nang matanong nung araw. When I was younger, ayoko nang marami kang... Yung sinabi ko na in-explain ko na... Because when I explain to the patient, I really take my time to explain. Dati, grabe ako mamboljak ng pasyente. Grabe ako mamboljak ng staff. I was a mean person before. Siguro. Siguro kung gagawin ko yung ginagawa ko noon ngayon, madidemanda ako nun. Pero ngayon kasi I learned to become more patient with people. The staff, there was a time, I'll give you an example. There was a time my patient, my staff texted me, sa Bicol to she texted me that this patient was a pay patient, she was a private patient, and I had to order this lens for her. So may bayad yun. Only to find out when I arrived na charity pala yung pasyente. So usually, pagka noong araw, puputok na ako, di ba? Papagalita ko yung staff, ganyan. Pero ngayon, alam mo, sabi ko, may rason kung bakit ginawa yun. May rason ng Diyos kung bakit ginawa yun. Siguro kailangan ng extra attention ng pasyente, ganyan. Kaya niya gustong ipalagay yung lens na yun. And hindi ako nagalit. So hindi ako nagalit. When I did the surgery, I was calm, I was cool. So, swabe yung operasyon, no? Yung staff, umiiyak na nung dumating sa akin. Sabi ko, ba't ka umiiyak? Kasi Doc, magagalit ka sa akin. Sabi ko, hindi ako magagalit sa'yo. Sabihin ko lang sa'yo, next time, ayusin mo lang yung i-double check mo, yung pag-inform mo. And you know what I did? The second eye, nilagyan ko pa rin ng private na lens. Yung magandang klaseng lens pa rin ang nilagay ko sa kanya. Hindi naman premium, sobra naman yun. So, patay naman tayo sa budget. Medyo lang naman, German lens lang naman na monofocal na German naman ang nilagay ko. So, yun, naging ganun na ako ngayon. Kasi, naisip ko kung magagalit ako sa staff ko, pag nag-OR ka, ikaw rin maapektuhan, di ba? Mainit ulo mo, wala na, sablay na yung diskarte mo, iniisip mo na lang yun. So, huwag ka na lang magalit, di ba? Ibis na magalit ka, huminga ka na lang malalim, no? Just go on with what you're doing. Medyo mahirap gawin yun, pero alam mo naman yan, pag nagmamature ka na, umaabot ka na sa ganun level na don't sweat the small stuff, you know. May mga mas grabe pang may mas grabe ka pang dapat na problemahin kaysa diyan, no? And there's always a good reason why these things happen. Yun na lang isipin mo. There's always a good reason why these things happen. It's always for a good purpose, and you may not know it right now, pero eventually malalaman, kaya pala nangyari yun dahil ganito, ganyan. Diba? Ganun lang yan.
Kayo po, si Dr. Cabrera, kasi ang tingin ko sa kanya, sobrang cool niya eh.
Sobrang cool niyan. Idol ko yan.
Idol talaga.
Ito, gusto ko lang magkalinawan tayo ngayon Kung hindi mo pa alam, Benji, idol kita Kung hindi mo pa alam.
Dati ka lang ganyan, kahit anong resident ka, sir. Parang time.
Actually, oo.
Idol.
Kung gayahin niya, pero hindi kaya eh. Kalbo ko, hindi ko kaya.
I was trying to imagine kung what changed, whatever. I said, no, I've been Even in PGH, I would explain the same things I'm explaining to my patients now. It hasn't changed. In fact, ang joke sa grupo namin, lumaki na ng lumaki yung grupo, is, pag si Dr. Cabrera yung kausap, matagal pa yan kasi dahil pang sasabihin yan. So, I was never the type who will just tell the patient, may katarata ka, operahan natin yan, ganito gagawin natin, sige, next. It's not me. So I always explain what it is. I'm always in teaching mode. It's me. I can't take it away. If I take it away, my feeling is kasi if you don't educate your patient as to what they have and what they need and what are the options for that problem, and they make the wrong decision, kasalanan mo yun. Your duty is for them, to guide them towards at least a decision that won't make them blind. Diba? Now, if you've guided them correctly and you've spent more than ample time with them, and sometimes babalik pa yun, tama si Jan, pagbalik, parang sinabi ko na to Pero yun uli yung tanong, di ba? Hindi, yung parang, tapos may pangatlong beses pa, di ba? Yung hindi pa tapos yun. Tapos pupunta sa iba, di ba? May second and third opinion, tapos babalikan ka pa rin. Pa-explain ulit sa'yo. Bakit sabi ni ganon? Di ba? So you're thinking, utang na loob, pwedeng lumipat ka na lang. Di ba? Pero you can't. Di ba? Hindi mo magawa. Di ba? Hindi mo magawa. So you're still going to do it. So I still do that. And then yung kinuwento rin ni John na do you keep your cool with the staff or whatever. I'm one who thinks that once you lose your cool or you shout at someone, the response of that person is even gonna get worse. Kasi takot na nga siya, sinigawan mo pa, tapos nagtatapong ka pa ng gamit, di maya-maya, lumalala, sumasama yung sitwasyon. And then we always have patients who are generally awake. So, when you lose your cool and something's happening, they know that something's happening. And they, whether they blame the nurse or the circulating or yourself, di ba? They know it. So, sa akin, you have to control those things. You have to be, you have to put it inside you and keep it in. And then, when everything's done, yung iba, pagtapos ng lahat, di ba? Nakalabas na yung pasyente, maninigaw na di ba? So, ako hindi pa rin. Pero pagsasabihan ko, and then I will say, siyempre, tama si Jan, maya-maya, parang mangingiyak-ngiyak na di ba? I will say, I'm telling you all of this so that you learn. Because we are doing this for the patient. Kung may mali kayo, malaki yung mali. Hindi naman kayo mahihirapan yung pasyente. May ginastos siya, nadisgrasya siya, pumangit yung resulta natin, etc. So I said, we are in a medical field. You are supposed to do what's best for the patient. Kahit anong mangyari, di ba? Parang we're a team. Sabi ko, yung palpak mo, palpak ko pa rin yan. Di ba? So, hindi ko sila pwedeng, pahiyain, galitin, payakin. It doesn't matter to me. That's not the point. The point is next time. And if you tell them these things correctly, they should be better. Now, if they're repeat offenders, parang hindi pala tumatalab, tapusin mo na. You can fire them. You can, di ba, reprimand them. Make it formal, but you don't have to shout at them. That's not going anywhere. Ang masama doon, ikaw pa yung aatakihin sa puso.
Tama.
Di ba? Ikaw pa yung magkakasakit. Di ba? So,
Ikaw pa talo.
Ikaw ang talo.
Oo.
That's true. Tama ka doon.
Tapos, ikikwento pa nila ngayon yun, samang tao ng doktor na yun.
Sama ugali yan.
Pinagsisigawan ako, pinahiya ako sa harap ng pasyente. Ikaw pa yung masama. Hindi naman kikwentong, alam mo, palpak ako Di ba? So, sa akin, sige, let's see you say that nasigawan kita. Kasi, mahirap mangyari. So, yes.
People will always remember how you treated them
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
What they spent, di ba, in your clinic.
Yeah.
It's not your PF that they remember how you treated.
Correct. So, well, now, as I said, the age factor has crept in. I think I have about some families I'm treating the 4th generation heading to the 5th. So, medyo nakakahiyang aminin, pero diba, must be doing something right.
Yeah. Kaya nga kita idol Kaya kita
Young
idol.
Young pa rin. Young pa rin.
Yan pa rin, di ba?
Naubusan na ako.
Young
Ito na
one.
lang eh.
Sir Emil, how has it changed for you?
I remember a few incidents back in the day, and you'd remember na we've all had our share of many in the OPD, and many a times pagka junior ka, kung ano sasabihin ng senior mo, automatic sunod ka lang. So when our time came, at least second year ka na, on to the third, we had our share of patients naman talaga. Lahat tayo dito, we had our share kung ano yung marami. And back then, many was 120 to 150 general OPD. And there was a custom back then na pagka alas 12 na tanghali, labas. Kung saan kami makakarating, mag-inhawa naman palagi, balik 1:30, 2 o'clock. Ang maganda doon, kung natapat ka sa senior na tutulungan ka, edi ubos yung tira. Pero pag natapat ka sa senior na magaling, mawala. So lahat ng pasyente yun, iyo. Tapos tatawanan ka na lang kung may action na kakapal lang
Ganyan kapal.
Tapos reti mo yan pare ha, kunin mo yan. Yun pala, 1-3, 1-5 yung 15 after. Mangiyak-ngiyak ka na, 2 hours ka na, ganyan. So, during that time, when tumaas na yung level mong konti, may konting hawak ka ng konting power kung sabihin, I made it a point that the food comes to us. Kasi bakit ka pa lalabas? So lahat ng mga restaurants na hindi nag-deliver noon, kinakausap ko, 20 kami, 15 kami, mag-deliver kayo, may pera kayo doon. Kasi mag-refer pa kami sa ibang sections ng ospital. And eventually, we stayed there. Sabi nila, grabe ka naman, workaholic. Yeah. Pero ang maganda sana, kung umalis tayo, pagbalik natin, tapos na. Pagbalik natin, trabaho hanggang alas 5, alas 6, alas 7. Ganun pa rin, tambak pa rin. And ang kawawa dun, these people, they wait.
Yes.
So one of the things that really goes on up to this day, alam naman natin, here and there, malilate talaga tayo. Nakakaalimutan sa lahat ng hindi nakakalam at hindi pa marunong hanggang ngayon. Pag sinabi, nag-rounds po ako. Dati yun, nung 5 years old siguro ako, nag-rounds papa ko, ilang pasyente nira-rounds. Pero ngayon, sinong nira-rounds natin sa ospital? Diba? Parang lukuhin mo man yung pasyente. So, technically speaking, I don't wanna be late. Still don't want to be late. I still bring my food to my table para paglabas ko, andun lang yung pasyente. Yes, it's nice to have that good meal, no, sometimes. Pero pag tapos ka na, and that attitude of bringing things to me has really proven, di ba? Na COVID man nangyari, nag-lose ng 20 pounds o nag-gain naman ng 25, di ba? Ganyan. Di ba? So,
Yes, sir.
so that's one of the things na talagang sinabi na ni Sir Benz lahat na ganun, naramdaman ko rin yun because really, when you talk to the staff, meron din akong ganung experience na napahiya talaga yung staff. Alam mo naman, mali yun, you talk to them, yes. Pero at the end of the day, ang focus naman natin lahat is patient. So we give the patient the best experience. And adding to that, having all these models in front of us, no? Not to mention the two distinguished gentlemen na nandito, talagang you ask your patients, di ba? Parang, how else can I serve you better? O, di ba? Yun. So,
Correct.
I constantly talk to the patients and parang ask questions na kung hindi direct, ikot-ikot ng konti to just achieve the same question and you get your answer. Paano mo sila na-serve and how best you serve them or how lacking yung service mo sa kanila. And at the end of the day, that furthers you more than any professional fee. So, there.
Thank you for those.
May idadagdag lang ako.
Kulang
Maganda yung sinabi. Yung sinabi ni Emil na parang why take a break? Pwede mong tapusin. Di ba? Lalo na pag residency.
Correct.
And going back to John's statement na kung ano ka nun, yung ka pa rin ngayon. No? So, ito, we used to do this. No? When we were residents, siyempre tama, mahaba yung pila sa umaga, mahaba pa rin yung pila sa hapon. And they're there, in PGH, they're there at the break of dawn, if not 3 or 4 in the morning. So by 3 in the afternoon, 12 hours na silang nag-aantay, diba? Tapos babalik pa sa probinsya yun. So